Hello my fellow watch lovers all over the world. I hope you guys are safe and doing well. Welcome to the channel. And today we have this Jaeger LeCoultre from the 1940s, which is in need of a little help. And here's what's coming up in this video. So this military style Jaeger LeCoultre is from the 1940s and from the World War II era. It has a caliber P469-A, which is a manual wind movement, housed in a nickel-plated case with a stainless steel caseback. Now this particular piece belongs to a collector who I've known for many years, and he loves collecting watches from the World War I and World War II eras. And so he bought this watch a few years ago and added it to his collection, and it became one of those watches that he respected but couldn't and didn't love. He wasn't in love with this watch due to the condition of the case, and whenever he did wear it and somebody saw it, he would pass off the ugliness as character. Sounds like a bad marriage. So he decided to part company and sell it. And that's when things got a little bit messy. He said the plexiglass had a few minor blemishes and a few minor scratches on it, so he decided to change it himself with a brand new plexiglass, just to spruce things up a little bit and make it presentable for sale. So he ordered a new plexiglass and was brave enough to attempt the installation himself. However, the plexiglass he had ordered was the incorrect size, so he decided to put the old plexiglass back in and ended up cracking it in half. And so this act of bravery became a shocking and traumatic ordeal and caused him to put the watch away in a drawer and then curl up in a fetal position for a while until he could face it again. And so many moons have passed since then, and the bitter taste has slowly worn off. And so here we are with this watch in front of us to see if we can make that bitter sweet again for him. So as I was wrestling with the case back, you can see a small part of the plexiglass that was rattling around inside has just fallen out. The owner of the watch sellotaped the pieces together before he stored it away in his drawer. There are many service marks on this case back, inscribed by master watchmakers from the past who have serviced this watch. Now, some of you may be wondering why I pronounced Jaeger LeCoultre the way I did, as others pronounce it as Jaeger LeCoultre. And there are many discussions on this topic without any definitive answer. The company on its official videos itself actually pronounces it Jaeger LeCoultre. But my theory is, and other people may have the same theory, is that since Switzerland has two official languages, which is French and German, and the word Jaeger is actually a German word meaning hunter, hence why there may be two pronunciations, a French version and a German version. So now that I've removed the movement from the case, we can have a look at the dial, and the dial definitely has some character and aging to it, and also the lume on the hands has faded. The lume on the hands is most likely radium, the stuff Godzilla is made out of, so very highly radioactive. And so the plan is to leave the dial as it is and relume the hands with some modern, safer lume. We will strip the movement fully and service it, and we will try and restore the case to make it look more beautiful. And as for the plexiglass, well, we'll just glue all the pieces back together and that should buff right out. Or is that just wishful thinking on my behalf? It'll definitely need a new plexiglass. So now this case is a nickel-plated case and the base metal appears to be brass. And so the plan is to remove the old nickel plating, remedy all the issues with the case, and then replate it with some fresh nickel. So there are a few ways we can remove the old nickel plating, and one of them is to use chemicals. But I will not be using this option as chemicals are quite nasty and they could also attack the base metal. The other option is to polish it all off using my powerful polishing machine. But this may be too much for this delicate vintage case, as there is a chance I could round off all the sharp lines and edges. So the best course of action, I think, is to use those good old hands. Now, as you can imagine, this hand polishing process takes a few hours and requires a great deal of patience and perseverance. And I could have cut and edited this whole process to about a few minutes, but polishing something by hand can be very therapeutic, and the whole process can give you a lot of joy. So instead of cutting and editing this process to about a few minutes, I have kept this segment quite long and added some soothing music, just so that you guys can see the process and partake and experience in this soothing experience with me. And once you're in full swing and you're in the groove, it's as if nothing else matters and nothing else exists around you. It's just you and the subject in front of you. And during these testing times with this global pandemic, this is just what I needed. A bit of hand polishing therapy to forget all the troubles around us. So this sandpaper stick I'm using, I borrowed it from a lady's toolbox. And when I say toolbox, I mean beauty box. I think they use it for nails or something. But it's perfect for this job, as it's quite soft and quite flexible. So there's less risk of going too far too soon without realizing and without being able to turn back. Now there's a tricky part where the bezel meets the case, and so I need something a bit more smaller and a bit pointier. And in watchmaking, sometimes you have to make a tool to make a tool to make a tool. But in our case, it's nothing revolutionary, just a stick and some sandpaper and a bit of super glue. That's much better. Now I can get right into that groove and work on that angle slowly without the risk of rounding off that sharp line. The music was composed by my little brother on an electronic thingamajig. So if you guys require any special music for your videos, then please get in touch, and I'm sure he can cook something up for you guys for a small fee. Now that I've got most of the nickel plating off, I'm just going to use a Dremel on the sides. This will allow us to remove some of the deeper scratches that were beneath the nickel plating and some of the scratches that were caused due to the manual sanding, whilst maintaining the square profile of the sides. And now I'm using a pointy felt piece just to remove all those fine scratches caused by the sanding in preparation for the final polish. And once again I'm using a cylindrical piece, and this time a felt piece, to maintain the squareness of the sides. And look at the state of my hands. Do you know, in real life I have beautiful hands, or I used to have beautiful hands, but many years of DIY accidents and hard labour have not been too kind on my beautiful hands. Gross image coming up, spoiler alert. Oops, maybe I should have said that before. So after a quick wash in the ultrasonic machine, I can inspect the case and it's looking okay. What do you guys think so far? So just a quick final polish on the finishing mop, and then I can move on to the stainless steel case back. Oh, and did I tell you guys I used to have beautiful hands? Well, now you know why I don't. To be fair, I would use some latex gloves at this point, but due to the global pandemic, our frontline health workers need them more than I do. So once I run out, I just haven't ordered any new ones. So after another wash in the ultrasonic, the case is almost done, and the stainless steel case back just requires a final polish. And as you can see, we have managed to maintain some of the sharp straight lines, even though brass is a very soft metal. The case back as well, we have managed to keep that straight line around the edge without rounding it off too much. And all that's left now is to replate the case. It was a lovely day outside in the garden, so I decided to work on the hands with maximum ventilation. But good idea to still use a face mask. So I let the hands soak in some alcoholic solution for about 10-15 minutes. And then I'm using a couple of sticks to gently rub off the radium whilst keeping the hands always immersed in the solution so that no dust particles become airborne. Then I gave them a quick ultrasonic bath, and it was then that I realized that the hands were not actually blued but painted, and once the paint had come off, I could see that the hands were corroded and pitted. I was expecting that this part of the restoration would be just a case of taking the old loom off and applying some fresh loom. However, I cannot leave the hands in this state, so I will try and polish them and try and blue them myself. So I'm just using various grits of sandpaper here just to polish the surface and remove the corrosion. And then I'll take it onto some really fine microfiber and then maybe use some liquid polish. Now as you can see, these are not solid steel hands, they're sort of skeleton hands, so you have to be very gentle while doing this. And also the minute hand has a slight curve to it, so you have to be careful when polishing this, as a slight wrong move whilst pulling back and forth on the sandpaper can cause it to kink or even bend. So just go easy, Take it slow and be gentle. This whole process took me a few hours. So I'm using this very high-tech material called sellotape to mop up any debris or particles that may be on the microfiber to avoid further scratches to the steel. And these small particles may have been left over from the previous polishing job. And once I'm happy with the polish, I'll give it a good clean in the ultrasonic and get ready for bluing. And with every project, there's always a setback. I pulled out my flamethrower from my cupboard, which I hadn't used in many years, but realized it wasn't working. So instead of waiting around for another flamethrower, I did a bit of wishful thinking, even though I knew it probably wouldn't work. And so I was granted access to the ladies' workshop. And when I say ladies' workshop, so here I've just strengthened the steel a bit by heating it and then quenching it in some oil. And then I go through the whole process again of cleaning, polishing, cleaning. Now I know, as most of you might also know, that the temperature in the kitchen will not be adequate enough to give us the blue that we need, but sometimes it might just give us a light straw colour. And if you look closely here, you can see it turning blue. But it was nowhere near what I was expecting, so I started faffing about with it for a few more hours, and in the end, well, I had to find a different solution. So I have a huge variety of different looms here, and as you may remember, the hands had a sort of vintage orangey colour to them. And that orangey colour is due to decay and aging. The original radium would not have started off as an orange colour. So I'm a bit undecided on which colour to go for. And after a while, I have decided to stay in theme with the rest of the dial and go for a slight greeny colour. So I have this dark green colour from Berjan, and I also have one from Superluminova. So in the past, what I've done is I've mixed both of these together, and not because of any proven science or any hidden family secret recipe, but it's just something I tried previously and it gave me some good results. And I just mix it 50-50. And I've just put it out onto this piece of glass so you can see the color comparison. And I'll give them a quick charge before I mix them up so that you guys can see the variation in colors. So I would like to achieve a matte look for this particular loom. So I've just diluted a little bit of PVA and I'm using that as the binder. Okay guys, so I'm ready to plate and I've got my nickel anodes here. I've I've got some of this old nickel solution which I haven't used in many years, and there may be some contaminants in there, and also the nickel activator here. So what I've done is I've ordered some fresh nickel solution and some fresh nickel activator, and I've also been recommended this cleaner to clean the piece that I'm going to plate. So I'll try that out. Then I have my distilled water which I produce at home, so there won't be any bits of metals or contaminants from the local tap water. And I've got my 1 litre containers, and then I've got my power source here. Now, I'm no expert in electroplating, but I have done some plating previously with decent results, so we'll see how this goes. So in order to do some basic calculations suggested by the seller of the solution, I will need some graph paper. And there's only one person in this whole street who may have some graph paper. Have you got some graph paper?
Yeah.
Can I borrow some? Now I've borrowed this bag from the ladies' toolbox, and I'll explain what I'm doing with this bag. And also the mask. Now I was expecting one big piece of nickel anode, but the seller who I bought this from gave me all these smaller pieces and suggested that I put them in an anode bag. He also suggested that the small pieces should be strung together using some titanium string. However, he didn't have any of these items in stock, so instead of waiting around and ordering it from somewhere else, I decided to use some bits and bobs lying around the house. And so I need to work out the surface area of the case. So I've just drawn an outline of the case on some graph paper, and then I'll just count the squares and get an estimate of what the surface area is. And so I followed the method given to me by this seller who sold me the solutions, and I rounded it up to about 6 centimeters squared and applied his formula, which is 0.01 amps per centimeter squared, and this is what I got. Now, if there are any experts out there on nickel plating who think this is wrong, then please let me know in the comments, as I would like to get better results next time. Now this 0.06 amps which I calculated, when I applied that to the power supply, it did give me just over 4 volts, which seemed correct for nickel plating, especially as the seller suggested that I do it over a 20-minute period. So low voltage over a longer period of time seemed quite right. You should definitely use some protective gear here, and since I don't have any latex gloves, I went into the ladies' toolbox once again. And when I say ladies' toolbox, I mean the cupboard under the kitchen sink. Now the anode bags should not allow more than 0.5 microns to pass through it. So instead of using the red velvet jewelry bag, I've decided to cut up my mask and use that as an anode bag. And since I'm not going to drill the anodes and put titanium wire through them, I've stacked them on top of each other so there is a connection. But I'll make sure when I put the crocodile clip on, the top one is not submerged in the solution, so that nothing from the crocodile clip gets into the solution. Okay son, we need to get out from here for a second please, because I'm going to do something dangerous. And there's going to be fumes, okay?
Only parents are allowed.
Yeah, only parents are allowed.
How many should I stay out?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So make sure you have really good ventilation, and also make sure the little ones aren't around, even if they love to see science experiments and watch things fizz and boil. As my one does. He'll put salt in my sparkling water just to see it fizz and then ruin all the bottles of water. So I have a water sprayer and 3 cups of distilled water just to clean the pieces through each stage. And so I'll clean the piece in this electro cleaner at 6 volts for about 3 minutes using a stainless steel anode. And it's this cleaning solution that gives off all the nasty fumes. You can actually see the fumes coming out like a fog. So the water in my spray bottle is actually from the tap, which may contain bits of metals and contaminants. And my OCD is the reason why I have 3 further cups of distilled water to make sure the piece is absolutely clean. Now I'm going to use some nickel activator, and you may be wondering why I'm doing this. Well, there may be some small amounts of nickel left over on the case that we missed during the polishing and cleaning process. So if I don't activate this, then the nickel won't plate over these areas. And I've done this for a short period of time at 7.5 volts. And so now you can see I've put the crocodile clip on the top anode and made sure that this piece is not submerged into the solution, thus avoiding any metal bits from the crocodile clip getting into the solution. Now I was told to do this for 20 minutes, so I didn't leave the piece unattended, and every 5 minutes I decided to turn the case around towards the anode for a good finish. However, during the last 5 minutes I was called away to an emergency on a very pressing issue involving an ice cream van, and it takes about a good 10 minutes to consume a very good ice cream. And so you can see some of the parts turned out really well, but a small section turned out black. But I'll try and sort that out on my polishing machine, as I think I have enough microns on there and enough meat on the bone for me to give it a polish. Now, when the owner of the watch and I were discussing the restoration, he said that he wanted to get more use out of the watch and suggested a gold plate and a toughened mineral crystal. And so, without my permission, one of my eyebrows went up slightly, and not in a disapproving way, but in an interested kind of, "oh, okay," kind of way. But he left the final decision to me. And this is the result after the polish. It's not brilliant, but I think it looks fairly decent. And this is the first time I've been using a cold plating setup, which is the solution that I bought this time. So I'll chalk it off as experience, and maybe you guys can advise me on the pros and cons of a heated system and a cold system, and tell me how to improve on the whole process based on your own experiences. So now on to the movement. And this in-house P469-A movement looks very clean from the outset, but looks can be very deceiving, as you'll see throughout this section. And many of you have commented in my previous videos that I shouldn't speed up the disassembly and assembly process, and that I should add more commentary, as a lot of you appreciate this part of the procedure. However, this restoration video is getting quite long. If I don't speed it up, then the footage becomes almost 40 minutes, just for this section alone. But in the future, I will be doing more just movement services for you guys who just want tutorials on how to service and oil movements. So this movement has this integrated click and spring in one, and I don't see any reason to remove this, as the only reason you'd remove this is to replace it if it was broken. So I'll leave it in, and my cleaning machine also has a very good heater, so it should dry out any moisture left underneath. Now this P469 movement is a very simple movement and was considered a workhorse of its time. So now slowly you can see some of the hidden dirt and grime within the movement. Now I really do like this brand, whose history dates back to the 1800s, and I have a very good Italian friend who is so passionate about this brand. And his passion and energy for this brand has over the years rubbed off on me too. And one of his favorite watches is the Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso. And one of these days I will have to do a restoration of a Reverso. Nice. This little pussycat looks very dirty. So almost stripped and done. I'm just going to put the balance back in so that it can go in the wash along with the rest of the parts. How did someone's nostril hair get in there? And even after all the parts have been in the wash, some of the pieces will still have to be further cleaned by hand, and also some of the screws are a bit dull, so I'll give them a quick polish. So with most vintage obsolete movements, it's quite difficult to find oil charts for them, and the oils that they used back in those days may not even be available today. So when these watches are serviced nowadays, modern oils are used, and when you can't find an oil chart for a vintage movement that you are servicing, just apply a similar principle as you would when servicing a modern movement. And in most cases, you'd use about 4 or 5 different lubricants. I.e., you'd use some grease for your heavy duty parts, such as your winding gear, your springs, some D5 on most of your posts, some mainspring grease for your mainspring, some 9010 for your train gear, and some 941 for your pallet jewel. And this is just a basic outline and not a definitive guide. Uh-oh, I can hear an earthquake coming.
Aren't you going to use your camera?
No,
Then why did you bought it?
to take pictures? What have you been up to, mate?
I want to use it for video.
Can use it.
Huh? I can hold it because I'm stronger.
It wasn't an earthquake, that was my 6-year-old son. And as you heard from loudmouth Muck Jones, who can't keep a secret and told the accountant that I had bought a new camera, and when I say accountant, you know who I mean. So I bought a new camera, and my excuse was my viewers demand better quality videos. And so I've been trying to use this new camera for this movement assembly disassembly segment. However, I have not been able to quite figure out exactly how this camera works, and so I lost a lot of footage, and some of the footage went black and white, some of the footage wasn't very good. I had to strip part of the movement again and assembly again in order to get the footage back. And so some of you who have watched my previous videos will notice a difference in the style of this particular segment. And it is down to me being a novice with this particular complicated camera. But hopefully, the more I learn, the better the footage will become. There is so much to learn about taking quality footage. Words that I've never heard of in my life, such as white balance and aperture and frame rate. So if there's any of you out there who can give me some advice on how to get better quality footage, then please let me know in the comments. Now, the top and bottom capsules for the balance, even though they have been in the wash, you will see that they are still quite dirty. So it's always good practice to remove them, give them a good clean, and then oil them and reinstall them. This shock setting is a very simple system and a very easy way to remove the capstone. And another tick from me for this brand and this particular movement. And so I ordered a low dome plexiglass to finish off this restoration, as a low dome one would look good on this particular case design. However, the one that came through the door had a small chip on it, as you can see. And so I have a higher domed one in stock, which I will just use just to finish off this video, and then I'll reorder another one and install that one before I hand it over to the owner. Okay guys, so we're nearly done and we're coming to the end of this long video. And while I finish up here, I would like to say a few words. I would just like to say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's subscribed and to everyone who's shown love and support towards me and this channel. I've just been absolutely overwhelmed and blown away by your support. And in the comments, you have been so kind, generous, caring and loving. And I believe that is the true nature of our species. And it's taking these dark days that we are facing together as a species for those inherent qualities to resurface. And I hope when these dark days are finally over, that we don't forget this kindness and compassion and love for one another.
Get off the stage.
Just show us the watch already.
Yeah, off with the set, send him to the dungeon.
Alright. Tough crowd. I was having a moment there. And so there you have it, guys. It's not a concourse restoration by any means, but it was never intended to be. The owner of the watch just wanted it restored in a way that he could get more use out of it. So we have tried to restore it in a way without disrespecting this watch and its heritage or its history. The owner of this watch was never tired of his old lady. He just never knew. She was worn out like an old recording, and then he broke her in two. But now, when he opens up his personal collection, he will recognize the curve of her case and the beauty of her face in an instant, and choose her to accompany him on that special day out on his wrist. And he can check her lume at midnight and see her glow nice and bright, because she's the love that he's looked for. And so please subscribe if you want to see some more. And so until next time, folks, stay safe, look after one another, and if the Almighty wills, I'll see you on the next one.